Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of the Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Joe Prota, Director of Brand Marketing at IBM. Joe, it is such a pleasure to be spending some time with you, particularly as you are one of our Internationalists of the Year this year. So a very hearty welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very flattered to be amongst that distinguished group.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, since that was a distinguished group, let's start talking about you and IBM, okay? All right, well, it would be very difficult not to start by talking a little bit about legacy. So, not only is IBM one of the world's most recognized technology brands, but it's really been a symbol of innovation and trust for well over a century. So, how do you balance that extraordinary heritage and legacy with the need to keep the brand relevant and forward-looking, particularly in these times?
I think we look to demonstrate our expertise in new and modern ways. This is a very disruptive time, which is an overused word, but it is. It's a very disruptive time, and people are trying to make the most of their AI investments and understand where to apply it to have a significant impact. And so there is desire for, a lighthouse amongst the storm and a calm and trusted voice, and that is thankfully our legacy. And so rather than speaking to our accomplishments of the past, we rather kind of look to take a more stoic tone amongst a lot of the bravado that's out there right now and use that as a way to kind of reflect our history while remaining relevant in the present.
No, that's a very interesting approach. And to be honest, I wish maybe more people took that approach. But at the same time, it really makes sense for the kind of brand that you are and what you symbolize. You brought up disruption, and you're absolutely right. In an era when brands are constantly disrupted by new competitors. And not only competitors, but shifting consumer needs, shifting stakeholder needs, and so on. How do you continue to differentiate in such a crowded, fast-moving market? Is it that lighthouse concept, or is it something stronger?
I think the best way to do it is to just identify sort of the overlap between what our audience is looking for and what our core offering is, right? And the AI landscape, the B2B technology landscape is really complex. There's a lot of room and a lot of honestly interdependency amongst our partners or would-be perceived competitors. And so the objective on our end is to make sure that there's the right association between what somebody is looking for and what IBM offers. Maintaining kind of a calm amongst the storm is as a tone of voice is absolutely right. But we try and fish where the fish are and demonstrate our value for what our customers need.
Well, obviously, no conversation today is complete without talking about AI. So why
Yep.
don't we delve into that a little bit, both in terms of obviously the opportunities, as well as some of the challenges that might be perceived in brand building. You often say AI in the loop, not AI alone. So I'd love you to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Um, when it comes to using AI to develop marketing in general, I think there's there's the there's two ends to the spectrum, right? There's the development of the big idea, right? And then there is the term that's starting to bubble up is the content pipeline. The content pipeline is when you're starting to get into volume. We're entering into a hyper-personalized world and developing assets at scale for places that like email, web, social, that type of mid, lower funnel content the amount of content you need, the volume of that content will soon exceed human scale. And so you need to have a tool that can help you do that effectively and efficiently. And that's where AI comes into place. And AI, I think, is going to be extraordinary at that. we have to be careful with how we use it in that place because there's some backlash happening if it can dilute your brand, especially if you've built it over time and have the legacy that IBM does. But nevertheless, the people want personalized experiences, and AI is a means to helping get there faster and, capture the potential of that. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's getting to the big idea. Before you can start to build out that AI pipeline, you have to have an idea. You have to have a just do it. You have to have a price list. You have to have a happiness. You have to have, in our case, a let's create. And getting to that is where I think AI has a lot of potential. It is a new tool that will allow for a ton of education and exploration to happen much, much faster. Imagine strategy teams that can immerse themselves in audience insight, product understanding, just by simply interacting with an agent, an AI agent, or creative teams that can look at a huge variation of creative ideas and take what's in their mind's eye and put it down on paper in a matter of minutes or hours and do it in exacting detail versus having to pull together swipe and sort of paint the picture of their vision and then communicate that. There will be no daylight between what is in somebody's mind's eye and the person that they're trying to pitch it to. And I think that's going to accelerate everything tremendously. We've seen it ourselves.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I guess what's happening is that there's a lot of marketers, a lot of brands that are experimenting in their own ways. But I think we're also starting to see some real examples and truly inspirational examples of work that's being done that could not have been possible, given, as you said, with the content pipeline and the kind of volume without AI,
Yeah.
because it's just not possible to manage all that data and interpret it and so on. Well, tell us a little bit more. You were talking, interestingly, I had mentioned competitors, but you were also saying in your landscape that some people who might be or I assumed that what you were saying, some people who you might perceive as competitors are actually also partners or collaborators. Tell us a little bit more about that. I do know that one of them is you do work with Adobe's Firefly, and tell us more about how they're all boosting productivity for your teams.
Well, I think if you're look, the key to unlocking AI is your ability to scale it and your ability to access all of your company's data. And so if your data resides on the AWS cloud or the Microsoft Azure cloud or the Google cloud, and then some of it exists on-prem, you need to be able to stitch that together. And that's, IBM pioneered the hybrid cloud strategy, and we very much still believe in that and are leading the charge in that front. And we're starting to see that strategy pay off as teams and companies are looking to get the most out of AI. So I call them, I say they're perceived to be competitors because our tools and software run on Azure, they run on Google Cloud, they run on AWS, and that's something that is often that's a really important buying decision for our customers. We want them to know that our software and products integrate really well. That's part of our marketing efforts to make sure that people are aware of that. But in terms of my world and developing work every day, we do have a long-standing partnership with Adobe. A lot of our tools will plug in with Adobe Firefly to help with governance and other regulations so that if we create something with AI and put it out into the world, it doesn't look like something Microsoft created, right? It's a very reductive example of what the products do together. And we've used AI with Firefly for that exploration piece that I was talking about before. So we did a co-marketing campaign with Adobe, where we turned the Las Vegas Sphere into a giant fishbowl. And and it was just filled with these very bizarre looking fish that were all wrong. And they were a visual metaphor of all the things that can go wrong with AI. It can drift, the data could be infused with bias, it could be incomplete data, and that creates these bizarre outcomes that no brand really wants. And, if you think about it, each one of those fish is a character. And if you've ever done character work, it's a really time-intensive process. You have to first identify, okay, I want one fish to look like a hamster. That was one of our fish, my favorite, right? And then you have to create variations of that. You have to show it to your creative director, and they have to show it to their creative director, and then it goes to the client, and then you sign off on it, and you get the feedback. And so we had 15 different characters, and what through Firefly, the creative team was able to show 20, 30 variations of each character within a 24-hour period. And we were able to say, okay, we like this one, we don't like that one. Let's do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that on each character. And then they were able to refine again in Firefly and perfect again in Firefly. And I think we were able to take a process that we estimated would have taken around 3 months and get it done in about 2 weeks. And and it was all just exploration of the creative. After that it was all driven by the person and a person's imagination and a collaborative effort. And then once it was done, we went into the production process. Somebody had to take this 3D, visual that was static and turn it into a huge moving object that existed in a 3D environment. So there was still a lot of human in the loop in all of this, but it just accelerated that development process.
No, and I think what is also so wonderful about the campaign, or at least that sphere example, is it visually and instantly gave people a real understanding about why you have to have a certain amount of credibility with the right AI sources. And that I think is what's absolutely brilliant. If you can communicate something visually on a complicated level that quickly is pretty amazing as well. I mean, not only the actual production of it, but just getting the message out. And that's absolutely, it's absolutely terrific. And that has to be one of your truly fun examples. Well, while we're talking about examples, do you want to talk us through your flagship Let's Create campaign?
Sure.
And that uses some great storytelling. And I know you have so many others, AI built for business and so on. Anything else you want to share with us about those? Because I'm sure the learnings would be of value to so many marketers.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Let's Create, interestingly, was born before kind of the Gen AI boom. It came out. We launched that shortly after COVID. But the spirit of it is still very relevant. We have a refresh coming up soon, which I think which I'm eager to launch into the world. The spirit of it was very, was it true then as it is now? What we've come to recognize is marketers or our audience, technology professionals, are really far more creative than I think they get credit for. And I don't mean creative in the sense of like when you think of Adobe or artists or developers. I mean like line of business leaders, CIOs, CTOs. They're often faced with these enormous challenges, limited resources, and they have to think through how do you apply technology? How do you change a process? How do you move around teams and resources in order to get a better output, to get things done faster and more efficiently? And really, we were inspired by development of a vaccine during COVID in 18 months versus 8 years. There wasn't anything new that was created then. There wasn't some new magic bullet that happened. There was just some people who got very, very innovative and creative in the way that they used what they had in order to accelerate that development. And what's interesting is at the core of IBM's DNA is this spirit of we'll go and figure that out. Let's figure that out together. You know,
The
a long
Watson
time ago.
legacy. Yes, the
Yeah,
Watson legacy.
a
Yeah.
long time ago, somebody
Yeah.
came to people at IBM and said, "We want to put a man on the moon." That's like me saying today, I want to invent time travel. Most people would laugh at it and say that's the stuff of science fiction. But people at IBM said, no, no, let's go. That sounds cool. Let's figure that out. They probably said it a bit differently, but nevertheless, the spirit was there. Let's go and let's figure that out. And new technology was invented to make that happen. Existing technology was used and thought of in a different way. So the idea of co-creation and solving really ambitious problems was at IBM's core. It's what we saw our audience sort of how they saw themselves. And honestly, in today's world of generative AI, and you have all these companies that are wondering, how do I apply this to my business to really get the most out of it? That spirit of let's create something is as relevant now as it was when we introduced it a few years ago. So that's how we arrived at that. Thought about our history, we thought about what our audience was seeing, we thought about what the market needed, and that's kind of where we landed and how we got to it. And we're going to continue to tell that story and refresh it, and for today's troubles and opportunities. And I'm excited to share that new chapter with the world.
I'm looking forward to it because that's a wonderful confluence of issues in terms of your strengths, what people need, it's and what's happening in the world. I mean, there couldn't be anything better, particularly for a global brand, and you know, a B2B problem solver for the most part that happens to be a household consumer word as well. So. Since let's just talk about your global role then. You talk about scale. I mean, you operate on a global level. Um, do you then encourage, should we say experimentation or innovation, which might be a more appropriate word, locally to maybe marry up with some particular issues in certain markets? Or have you learned that striving for consistency, particularly across the world, might work better for the brand? Or is there some happy marriage, you know, between them both?
We are striving for the happy marriage, but what we have learned over time is at our scale, ironically, the world is a small place. And so we need to maintain a consistent expression, a consistent look and feel, and a consistent approach so that our investments remain as powerful as possible, the way the brand shows up, and our brand equity remains as strong as possible. And frankly, we as a company have one story to tell. We have 250,000 employees roughly around the world. We want them all answering the question, what does IBM do in the same way? We want people to understand and build an association between IBM and AI, hybrid cloud, quantum. These are the things that we do and how we transform businesses. And so we need that foundation to be consistent around the world. And what we are hoping for is we've, spent a lot of time over the last 4 years driving that consistency, is that we can get to a place of innovation within that framework at a local level. And so we're not there yet. We still have some work to do, but it's really important to have that foundation and to have that consistency, because it is a small world. We do have, executives and clients that will do business with us in one country and then visit us in another, or have a different, part of that same company that exists in another part of the world. And that continuity is very important for us.
No, I can certainly understand that, particularly as many of those executives are global travelers and, you know, they see one message at one airport and you know,
Exactly.
it's nice that it's the same message. Interesting job for you though to be able to navigate some of that as you look to do more. Um, how would you advise other marketers to try to manage change while staying true to that broader brand DNA or shall we say purpose?
That's a great question. Um, I would look at un the whatever the marketer's company is, their unfair strengths and what they are known for within the market, and remain true to those. And then I would look at what the audience needs are and where their conversations are happening, and identify how you kind of find the overlap between the two. How do you enter those conversations and create a meaningful association between your company and what the audience needs, while remaining consistent with what you're known for today, or what your unfair advantages are, or both, depending on the age of your company?
Yeah, so that it seems natural then for one to enter those conversations.
Exactly.
It's almost not as if there's any selling or advertising or marketing taking place. It's just where one needs to operate.
Exactly.
That I think is probably works very well, you know, on a business to business level. I think probably depending on the type of consumer brand, that might be more challenging. But I think that what you've stated is an extraordinary place to start for anyone because that's really the essence of it all, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, well, what just to ask a couple of questions as we look to the future, what marketing trends do you think will most impact IBM's brand strategy over the next 3 to 5 years, even if 3 to 5 years is the right time frame. I mean, maybe I should be saying 6 to 12 months, but I mean, we're seeing
Yeah.
so much, and maybe not as much in the B2B space, but so much more with influencers, so much more even with B2B brands going on certain social media platforms, even things like TikTok. But I mean, those are tactics. I mean, I'm talking real, real trends. I don't know if we're going to double down on purpose or, there's all sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's absolutely changing minute by minute. So without getting too specific, I think we're paying very close attention to the uptick in video, and that seems to be the content that drives the most engagement and is where our audiences are gravitating to. And I mean video with a capital V, right?
Mhm.
It's films that exist on television in critical moments where you want to reach a mass audience. It's 6-second films that exist on TikTok and LinkedIn and everything in between. And so developing, video first content strategy and then making sure that you have the paid, owned, and earned machines to amplify that content is very, very important. The other thing is just changing consumption, is just the paying attention to the changing consumption habits. I think what of your audience, right? What we see for as a B2B tech company is likely different than what Coca-Cola is seeing and so on and so forth. But it is because it's getting so distributed, where and how you show up is really going to be much more tailored by company and by audience, I think. And that's really what we're paying very close attention to and trying to shift our content strategies around.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. And I also think that, sometimes marketing strategy writ large, does apply, across the board in many ways. So what would you say your biggest priorities right now are in terms of managing IBM's brand presence? Is it the migration to video or is it something else?
It's how do we maintain consistency? How do we achieve personalization and meet our audiences where they are? And how do we really show what we do in a way that people understand? We're out of a consumer product game. We don't have that halo effect anymore that some of our competitors do. But we do some truly extraordinary things that are, honestly, the foundation of modern society. So how do we show that in a meaningful way, is very important to us. So those are kind of the big things that we're paying attention to as we think about the brand going forward.
No, I love that. I just love that. How do we it's like the sphere example,
Yeah,
how do you show it so that and these are often very complex things to share. And how do you show it so that people get it? I mean everyone gets it. There's a wonderful rub off no, yeah, that everyone understands what IBM does. As I said, you say you're out of the consumer game as you were with ThinkPad and all that, but at the same time everyone knows IBM.
that's right.
So, all right, here's I can't wait to talk to you again about the refresh of Let's Create. But this one I think might be a nice one to kind of end our little discussion on. I know that you're a board member for the ANA's Educational Foundation, AEF. And you support emerging marketing talent. You've been very good about that. So, how would you advise a young marketer now just starting out? What would you say?
Okay.
Okay.
That's a great
Don't
question.
code. No.
Yeah, learn to vibe code. I think that the fundamentals of understanding what a great strategy and idea are is more important than ever before. And the ability to evaluate creative and have a point of view on it is more important than ever before. I've played around with a lot of AI. I've used AI quite a bit. It's only as good as the questions you are asking it. And so, like any great brand strategist will tell you, you have to keep, the 5 layers of why. You have to just keep asking why and why and why. And that's a discipline that you yourself have to cultivate in order to get to that skill and really unlock a powerful strategy for a brand or the way to go to market with content or anything like that. So, your ability to do that will unlock and make you exponentially better with a tool like AI. But you have to know how to ask those questions and how to hone that curiosity and what to look for. And I think that's very, very important. It's things that I learned when I was in school and that I know are still being taught. But there's a lot of hype around like, well, how do you use AI? And you got to use AI. And you need to be able to ask those questions of it. And so classic training around and then being able to look at creative because now all of a sudden you're going to see ideas coming at you in almost real time. And how do you evaluate if they're good? How do you evaluate if they're on brand? How do you evaluate if what's being shown visually is a good complement to being what's written on the screen or the page, or the core of the idea is actually coming through and it's meaningful? You have to be trained to do that, especially when you're going to have such a high volume of it coming at you. So I think having a point of view on creative and understanding how to come to a great strategy on your own and what a good insight is, those sort of some of those more foundational skills that you get going into a creative industry are still very, very important, more so than ever before. And then the other thing I would say is just use AI as much as you can and understand how powerful it is, how it can accelerate what you're doing, how to use it for what it's good at, understand the limitations of it, and when you can't rely on it any longer, those two things will help you go. And I'm sorry, I will say one last third thing. Relationships are really important. It's funny, I had a conversation with some students that at Quinnipiac University where I went recently, and I suggested to them, like, look around. The people that you're in this room with will become doctors and line business leaders and heads of state and so on and so forth. And as you grow in your career, these will be the people that you will ultimately bump into later on in life. And that means a lot and it goes a long way. And I think, the combination of those 3 things would be very helpful for anybody starting out in their career.
But what I like about what you say is that a lot of it has to do with people, and I also think it shows. Some people do worry that without AI, with AI, you may not have to have the kind of depth of education that one would like to believe one should have, and I think that the only way to ask questions well and to be able to understand how to dig through those strategy layers and to have a point of view is to develop yourself as well. And you have to know your subject, you have to know this. Now, I'm not saying AI can't help educate you, but you have to create intelligent questions, to be able to ask it. So I do, I'm always looking for the human connection and also how like humanity accelerated, so
Yeah, exactly.
well, it is a joy to talk to you. Congratulations again on being an Internationalist of the Year. And I am really looking forward to hearing about the next version of Let's Create, because I have a feeling it's going to be a new level of sophistication given the times that we're living in. So, what a pleasure! What a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.